Morning everybody, welcome back. Second day back for the year. So we're halfway through, or not halfway through, but we're part the way through doing our little wall cabinet. I presume you've seen our upload on Instagram and on YouTube channel finder. So we're going to continue with it today. So no more jig work for the moment, but we're still going to be cutting dovetails. So today what we're going to do is we're going to put a shelf in, and I'll just get Pammy to focus on the cabinet over there on the wall, and I will show you what I mean. So what we have here, when we look in there, I probably should have got the cabinet off the wall, but anyhow, you can see we've got a little shelf in here, and that little shelf is going to be dovetailed into place. So we'll go on with that and have a little bit of a play there. So today, that's where we're going to be. So pull up a chair, enjoy the day, because yeah, we're just going to play along with it as we go. Now, originally somebody said to me, drop a plan, and I thought, yeah, okay, I'll do that. But I still haven't got around to it. But anyway, we'll get that sorted later down the track, and there'll be a plan that will appear somewhere during the shows. So I hope everybody's well and happy, and got your cup of tea, and let's get on with it. So just get our parts wherever I've put them. Here we go. So the other thing I wanted to discuss today was I had some conversation with various people throughout the week about ways to overcome little blowouts that happen on the edges of pieces of timber. And there's lots of different ways of fixing little blowouts. There's also lots of little ways of avoiding them. And I tend not to avoid them during the shows, because it just shows you that, you know, these things happen, and they're things to look out for. And if you've seen somebody else do it before, at least you're aware of it, and you can take steps to avoid it with your work. So that's part of the reason why I don't try and avoid them during the show. But fixing them is not a hard task either. So with this one here, I'm not going to pull that all together. There were a couple of little blowouts. You can see there was one there. Okay, there's another little one over on this side here. Okay, and there's one down the bottom here. All right. Now, I'm not too concerned about that. As you can see here, I've been doing some marking out, and this is where our shelf is going to be. This is the back of the cabinet. Okay. And what's going to happen with the back of the cabinet is I'm going to cut a rebate around the outside of the cabinet to fit the back in. All right. I don't want to fit the back on it. I'm going to fit the back in it, for a couple of reasons. Number one, it looks nicer. Number two, we're going to put a French hook along the back of it, like I showed you on the other cabinet. And the other thing is, I don't want it to be a big hefty piece of material on the back, and I don't want it to stick out a long way off the wall. I want it to sort of sit in the wall itself. So keeping it as narrow as possible, it's only 100 millimeters, is probably the best idea. And if I rebate inside there, that's fine. Now, somebody said to me when I explained that before, was that you lose a bit of space by rebating into the cabinet. Well, yes, you do, but what are we hanging in there? You know, like we're putting in there screwdrivers and chisels and the like. And when you look at a screwdriver, you know, the diameter of a screwdriver is not very much. Okay, so it doesn't have to be a lot. So think about that when you're doing your cabinets. It's not a drama if you want to make them wider. Okay, so they will take bigger tools, that's fine. But for this purpose that we're doing here, it's for chisels and screwdrivers and spanners and the like. So they're only narrow anyway. So we don't want lots of tools in there. If you build it up with lots and lots of tools, it becomes this heavy thing that hangs on the wall and puts pressure on all of the contact that you have on the wall. It puts pressure on the bits and pieces that help to heap it on the wall. So think about that when you're building your cabinets. Therefore, another reason why I have it relatively thin is to keep the weight down a bit. Okay. Now, Camphor Laurel is not very heavy, but it does have some weight when you start building bits and pieces with lots of things on it. So now this is the back of my cabinet. Oop, I'll turn it around. This is the back of my cabinet. All of those blowouts, they're going to be cut out, so you won't see those anyway. But you can see here and here. I've measured about half the thickness of the piece of material. Now this is 14.5 mil, so I'm just over 7 mil, or just over 7 millimeters from the inside, and that's going to be the depth of my trench. So I'm going to cut the trench through here, so it's going to come straight through there. And this is my piece of material that I'm going to fit in there, so that will fit in through here. Okay, so it doesn't look like it fits now, but I haven't got it joined together, so when I pull it together I'll be able to cut this to size. Okay, so I'm not going to cut this to size until such time as I've got the whole thing glued up, after I've cut my trenches. Okay, now the router bit that I'm using to cut that trench is a 5/16 standard dovetail router bit. Now this is not one of ours. It's not one that we use in the use of our jigs, in the cutting of the dovetails in our jigs. It's an over-the-shelf one that you can get from Carby Tool, 5/16, which is basically all you need. And again, it's about the same diameter as my piece of timber. Okay, so that's what I'm going to use, and then it means I don't have to cut a lot off the dovetails are here. Okay, so we'll pull this apart and I'll just show you how I'm going to set that up. A lot of people in this case here, what they would do is they would set that router bit into a handheld router. Then they would put a fence on top of the piece, clamp the two pieces of timber together, and run the router over the top of it with a fence on top. Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do the whole lot on my table. Now, as you can see, I've already got the height adjusted to the correct height. So I'm going to set my router bit to the height of that. So we just spin that around. And I've got it to the height. Okay, that's about half the thickness of my piece of timber, and that's really all we need. Okay, so we've got to run it through like so. Now, I don't want tear out happening on my piece of timber. So you think this one through. If I put those two inside sections together, it's that way, and I cut, we'll go back to the other camera, and I cut the trench through here, what would happen is I would get blowout out here because of the direction of my grain. Okay, so I don't want that to happen. It's not such a big problem on the inside of, on the back side of the piece of material, because we're going to cut that out anyway. So an obvious thing would be to turn it over and do it that way. And that way I can cut through to here, right? but I would end up with blowout on here. So I don't want that either. So this is how it's going to happen. Grab a fence. So I have my fence. Now the distance that I have, difficult to hold this up in two hands, the distance that I have where my fence is going to go, or my piece is going to go, is the same distance. I'll just do it this way, I think. I'll lay that down on there.
That's better.
That might work. So what's going to happen is my shelf's going to fit in like that, right? So the distance from the bottom of there to the centre is 100 millimetres. And the reason I go to the centre is because my door is going to go from the other end to the centre of there, okay? So you need to make sure that you measure right to the centre. Thickness of that will be dictated by whatever thickness you have for your shelf. And so my distance in here, halfway between the two, the top and the bottom, is half of 5/16 is 9/32. So 9/32 up from the end is going to be my centre mark, which gives me a bearing on my router. So I can have a little play there with my measurements. So the best way to go about this one, have the back out, and my measurement from there to there, and this is how we get our measurement. Just get my ruler. I can get my measurement just by measuring from there to there, and that's 85 millimetres from there to the bottom of my board. So if I measure 85 millimetres, this is when I'm setting my fence to the edge of my material, oh sorry, the edge of the router bed, and it's the leading edge, okay, so it's the one on this side. Whoops, dropped a bit. And then I'll clamp that down. Okay, so now what we have is somewhere where I can run my two pieces of timber through my fence with the fence in place. Okay, now that's going to wobble all over the place. So a cramp. I had a piece of offcut here. Now I'm putting a piece of offcut on the back edge of it. Okay, so just come in on that. That piece of offcut will catch any blowout that might occur. So clamp that in place.
Just to clarify, where are the dressed edges that are going to be on the front of they're on the inside, aren't they?
Yes, that's correct. The dressed edges are on the inside.
So your blowouts will happen on the back.
Yep, and I've got one piece upside down. So thanks for bringing that up, Pammy. I've just realised I've got them back to front. Well, good thing I thought about that. Dressed edges are on the inside, so they're on the inside of there. And this is my back edge of one, and the back edge of the other is on this side. Now, because I'm only making one cut, Just make sure everything is lined up nice and even. Everything's laid out properly. By doing it this way, I know my trenches are going to meet when I put the two pieces together after. Okay. So that would just necessitate me just running that straight through, and I can come out the back of here without any fear of actually damaging my piece of material. Okay, so here's on everybody, and we'll give that a cut. Sometimes I'm a little apprehensive about these, but I don't do them often enough to think that I can get them right every single time, so thank you. Okay, so here's on everybody. Here we go. Little piece of sandpaper. And you can see we have quite a nice little dovetail. Now, just taking the excess off there. And so when you see them like that, you can see that they actually line up really nicely. So yeah, quite a nice little dovetail. So that's going to look really nice there. Now, as you can see, my piece of rough timber has also got a little dovetail in it, but that's all we need. Okay, now, the important thing to remember here is when we cut the dovetails in our other piece, in this piece, do not change the height of that. Do this one straight away so that you get exactly the same depth of cut, okay? Otherwise it's just not going to work for you. So one of the things you can do now is assemble the frame. Once you've got the frame assembled, then you can measure your distance between your dovetails, and then we can cut the dovetails to size. So let's assemble the frame. Someone laughing out loud there. Okay. And so there's my frame with my little trenches in there. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to know the distance. I'm just going to squeeze that up because it's a little bit tighter than I normally do. And my distance, as you can see, this is the back. As you can see, the distance of that from there to there is going to be whatever that measurement is, and I'll take a ruler and measure that. 300's too small. And my distance from the bottom of that one to the bottom of that one is 335 millimetres. Okay, so this needs to be cut to 335. Do this by hand, or you could take it over to the drop saw, which is what I'm going to do, and I'll get the right length. Okay, so just go to the drop saw and I will cut that little piece off. Okay, now I need to cut my dovetails. So that's going to fit in there perfectly, like so. I need to cut dovetails on those. Now remember, your height of your dovetail bit should not have moved. Just put that out of the way. Get rid of some of these things. Okay, I've got to go and get another fence that I forgot to prep. Stay there. So what I have here is a fence that I've made some time ago with a very high backboard on it. Now the idea of that is, again, you can see I've got dovetail cut out there. You see that one there? It's designed for this router bit. Okay, so I've got a special fence for it, and what I can do is I can support my piece of material on a solid back while I'm cutting the dovetails. Okay, so now the first thing to do is do test cuts. So I have to set this up. I have to work on the left-hand side of the fence. Just get that through there so I can get a purchase. Oh. That knob's not going to work. To try something else. Some of the hand knobs that I have are a little bit shorter than others, depending on the thickness of the fence itself. So I just have to just talk amongst yourself there, folks, for a sec. I forgot about this bit. So what happens when you put things away? I'll have to live with it. It will work. Okay, now just come round this way here. Just got to slide this into place. Now I only want to take a small amount off. So what I'm doing is I'm just checking in here. I'm going to use a piece of scrap to do this. Like so. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to push that straight through and cut myself a rebate. That's not going anywhere, that's not going anywhere. So ears on, everybody. Nice little dovetail there. Let's see how it fits. Absolutely perfect. So that fits in there really nicely and it gives a really nice look. So all I need to do now is cut my other piece. I can do both edges of it. This is the main one, so I'm going to cut both ends. I'll flip that over, then I'll do the other top edge as well. Okay, so ears on. Okay, so now the litmus test. See if it fits. What I will do is I'll just tidy up the furry bits first. The little furry bits on the end here, they actually interfere with the fit. Just a little bit, need a lot. Just take the furry bits off the right way. That's the bottom. nice fit. If I could get it down to go down straight, that'd be fine. Okay, and there we have, this needs to be pulled in a little bit. We have a nice fit. Now I'm going to leave a gap at the front. Take that right through. I want to leave a little gap like that at the front so that I can put a coloured piece of material on there like I have on the other cabinet. So I might have to trim a little bit off the back of the shelf before I actually fit it after I've glued the framework together. So I'm going to glue the framework together now, and then we'll fit the shelf. I may need to cut it a little bit or sand a little bit off it. We'll see how we go. Okay, let's get rid of some of this stuff. As you can see, making up your own fences and jigs and things. I know Fix-It had a little competition with various jigs and what's the best jig that you use in your workshop and so forth. And it's a really good idea because you get to see what other people are actually doing. And some of the things that you'll see actually fit in with the work that you're doing. So keep an eye on his program. You will see various things like that happening, and they are really good for the, particularly the beginner woodworker, or even the experienced ones get some good ideas. So just take my router bit out. Rid of that, rid of that. Okay, let's get this glued together. As you can see, supporting it while you're removing or pulling things apart is always a good idea. That way you're not going to damage anything or rip open your joints. Okay. Inside edges. Gluing platform. Try and save the bench some way. And I need a piece of timber. Something to put some glue on. Bit of glue. Doesn't want to come out. Been a while since I've opened the glue bottle. There we go. Brush. Always a good idea to set yourself up beforehand. As you would have noticed, looking for that hand knob that I couldn't find, and I'll need a square. So this one and this one. Okay, just get that out of the way so you can see. Back edge, that's my back edge. That's the bit I want in there, so a little bit of glue. Now, don't overdo the glue, we don't want too much in there. That's a back edge, that's a back edge. Which way did I have it? This way. The importance of putting marks on things. Just making sure that everything goes back where it should do. You'll notice that I haven't gone all the way through with the glue. I've only gone part the way through. I don't want a whole lot of squeeze out on the inside of the box. On the outside it doesn't really matter a great deal because we're going to dress that up anyway. There's the first one. And you can see I've got the grain running around the inside, so it's a continuation of that board. At this one here, not so much, it was the other edge of it, so I just have to get my colour right. And it's that way. So a bit of glue here. Oh, it was that way, wasn't it? Yes. Okay. Contemplation time when you're doing this. Focused on getting everything right, making sure everything's in the right spot. As you can see, haven't overdone the glue. Haven't had to really because the joints are exceptionally good fit. As you can see, it fits really nicely together. There's a bit of wipe off some of this excess. Now it's not squeezed right up yet. Now what I'm not going to do is put the fence, the shelf in it. I'm going to leave that off for the moment. I can't do any more to the framework until such time as it's dried out. As you can see, it squeezes up quite nicely. Okay. Check for square. Needs a bit more of a squeeze up here. It's a bit of a tweak this way. While the glue is still wet, you can still manipulate the framework to make sure that it's perfectly square. And spot on there, spot on there, and we're spot on there. Cool. Now just wipe off the excess where my bit of a rag was. You'll notice I don't leave the cramps on. I don't leave the cramps on while I'm waiting for things to dry. It tends to squeeze the timber in the wrong direction often, and that could cause you a little bit of grief because it generally stays like that. I've just got a couple little bits on the inside. I did have a bit of squeeze out on the inside, which I don't particularly like. Wasn't that much, but it was enough. Like I said, you don't have to overdo the glue, just a small amount would be fine. You've been a bit productive, have you been, Gaz? Eight boxes. Okay, so there's my frame. Okay, so that's all glued together. Now I'm not going to glue this into place. The reason being is because I want to cut a rebate in the back of the cabinet. Now the rebate is going to take the back wall of the cabinet. So you can't really do that when the fence is in the way, or when the shelf is in the way. So I want to cut the whole of that on the router, but I have to do that once I've got once the glue's dry. So I can't do it just at the moment. So we'll let that sit. To do that, this is the shelf that's going to go in there. So we've got that all sorted. So I'm actually going to have to trim this down a little bit because I want to put a feature piece across the front, and also I want to leave a little bit more at the back of it so that I can fit the back in there up against this outside edge of the fence. So that's going to happen once it's all dry. So that'll be part of next week's process. So this week, what I'm going to do, we'll put that aside. I want to talk to you about doing the back. Now, the cabinet itself has lots of little features in it. It's got surrounds around the door. Originally we were going to put 2 doors on, but we're going down to 1 door. The door frame will have a lining around the outside of it. I'm going to put butterflies in it because it's going to be a mitered door, and it's going to have a perspex front in it rather than a solid wood panel, which means you can see into the cabinet. So you'll be able to see whatever's in the cabinet. But what I want to do is I want to make sure that there's other things in there that actually sort of make the whole thing, you know, a little bit special, a little bit better than just a bland cabinet. Now, I could use a piece of plywood. That's not a problem. I generally don't like using plywood in my boxes and things like that. So I try to sort of avoid it at all costs. So what we're going to do this time is I'm going to put a shiplapped boards across the back. Now, I can go down to a hardware store and I can buy the shiplap pieces, and then I just cut them all to size and so forth. But I don't want to do that either. What I want to do is I want the shiplap to match up to the rest of the cabinet, which means they've got to be camphor, so I have to make them. Okay, so making shiplap bits is pretty easy. So I'll show you how to do that, and that's what we're going to do now. I've got 15 minutes, which was about the amount of time that it would take me to show you how to make a shiplap piece. And thank you. So I've already made the back, and I'll show it to you. I haven't glued it together yet, but better take that off there, it's all covered in glue. I was going to talk about the virtues of camphor, but I've spoken to lots of people, and there aren't too many of them, unfortunately, so I'll keep that for another day. So this is what a shiplap looks like. So close up, you can see cut out there, cut out on the opposite side, and then chamfered edges. Okay, so they're very fine chamfers. They're not very big at all. And all they do is, if you just come in on this here, Pam, you can see they just distinguish between the two boards. Okay, because you can see the chamfer on the inside edge there. The other thing that I've done is I've chamfered the inside of this bit here as well, which means that the glue can sit in there as well. It's got glue up and it's not going to squeeze too much out. So that's how we're going to do the shiplap. So this is the back panel, and that's what you'll see when you look into the box. And what I tried to do there was get a feature, and you can see the feature is this lovely piece of colour right through the middle of it, and it'll be right in the middle of the box. So it's going to look quite nice. What I want to do is I want to show you how to make that. Okay, so I'm just going to make a small version of it, and I'll show you how I went about it. So I've got 15 minutes left, or 10 minutes now, so we'll go through that process. Now, the router bit that I use to make that is my tenon cutter. The tenon cutter comes in our Ultimate Cutter Kit, or you can buy it singly if you like. There's a link to our cutter kit at the bottom of the page, so have a look there. I've got two bits of offcut here, there we are. So these are the two bits that I'm going to sort of join together for you. They're only small bits, but they give you an idea of what we're going to do. So if we want to shiplap those, what I have to do is I have to do the top side of one and the bottom side of the other. Okay. Now, the important thing to remember is you need to be exactly in half thickness. So you need half a thickness on top, half a thickness on the bottom. You could probably take a little bit more out to allow for movement, but I generally don't. So to get halfway, all I do is this. Use my finger gauge, guess where the centre is, turn my board around, hold it exactly right, and redo my finger gauge, and you can see I'm right in the middle. Okay, so the mark is right in the middle. So if I take this half off this one and the other half off the other one, the two pieces are going to fit together. So we set our height to that 1/2 mil. Like so. Now I'm going to have a 10mm overlap. Again, another fence where we use halfway. This is the fence that I developed for the use with our dust extractor system, and is basically designed for my tenon cutter. Okay, so you can see that the cutout is square like the tenon cutter is. The hole there allows the dust to be extracted out. Again, this is where little gadgets and jigs and all sorts of things come in handy. So 10 millimetres, come right round. You see? So I'm just measuring 10 millimetres. Lock my fence in place. Now I'm not going to hook the dust extractor up to this one because I've got such a short piece to do, it doesn't really matter. Push block. So all I'm going to do now is just push straight across the top of that. So ears on everybody. And so you can see I've got a little cutout there. Now they were going that way, so this is the top side. Flip it over. Okay, so the two pieces fit together like that. I've got to take a little bit more off, so I'll just raise that up a tiny little bit and I'll give it a recut. So recut. Just had to come up a whisker. A bit more. And there we have a perfect fit. Now the next step with shiplap is to give yourself a little chamfer on the edge there so that you can designate the two boards. So all I've done there is take yourself a little plane, and all I'm going to do is just all I'm doing is I'm resting on this corner here and this corner here, and all I'm doing is just taking a little bit off there. You can see it hasn't taken very much off, just a tiny little bit, and that's basically all we need. And when we put the two pieces together, what I have to do now is just take the outside edge off this one. Doesn't need to be much, you can do it by eye, it doesn't have to be measured. And there we have quite a nice little camphor shiplap. Okay, so all I could do is continue that. All I need to do now is just continue that across the board. So the front of this board, the back of that board, and so forth, and work your way across the board so that you've got what we have as a layout. Okay, so it's quite easy to get some of this stuff sorted without having to go to the trouble of buying it and trying to sort of dress it up to fit the work that you're trying to do. But that's just a very simple way of doing things. Now when I'm gluing this together, shift this again, I won't glue it together right at the moment, but I'll show you the technique that I use, and I'm going to do it while off camera because it takes a bit of a fiddle. Find my boards. So what I'll do with that just a couple of offcuts. So you'll spread it with glue. Just line them up. Just a couple of offcuts. Make sure they're relatively flat. If they've got a bow in them, that's also a good idea. And the little bow, your bow should go this way so that you're pulling down the ends and the inside's got pressure on it as well. Now these two pieces are fairly flat. One of the other things that I would do with that, and I'll change this in a sec. Okay, so that will hold that pretty flat while you're working on it. So let's do the other end. Now, what can happen here is you can end up with glue squeezing out and joining and gluing that board to these. So a way around that, little piece of greaseproof paper. And I know this is a bit of a fiddle, but it does work. Second one. Okay. And that'll stop the glue from sticking to the boards if it squeezes out. And then it's just a matter of getting a wider clamp and just pull your boards up like so. Okay. Now you don't need a lot of pressure, just a small amount of pressure. And of course I'll have to put a piece of paper under here and here, and when that's done I will put my second clamp on here just to pull it together, and that'll keep it relatively flat. Okay, so it's important because it's small and because it's thin. It's going to move all over the place. So the idea is to make sure that you get in a position where you can get the whole thing nice and flat, and then you can run it through a sander if you have to. You can plane it if you have to. You can cut it to size because you've got one solid piece. So it'll give you a really nice piece, and as you can see, it's got a nice feature right through the middle of the board. You can see that's going to look really, really nice once it's got a bit of colour on it, a bit of finish on it. So that will actually enhance your cabinet as well. So I'll glue that together off camera, and I'll show you next week, and we'll have it cut down to the size. Again, the reason I do this is to give myself a thicker piece of material to work with. I could buy 10mm plywood, but it just doesn't cut it for me. So we're going to do that. So have a good week, everybody. And stay dry if you can. Pretty wet up here. But anyway, we'll get onto it again next week, and we'll go from there. So have a good week. I was going to talk about Camphor Laurel, but we've run out of time, so maybe next week. So have a good week, everybody, and I will see you all again.